Warning: the following video contains a complex installation that requires a great degree of effort and time. It is meant to be a guide and reference for prospective installers. Oh, and one more thing. Following this video could cause your Model 3 to do this.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Super pumped to bring you this episode. This is a full ambient lighting kit installation, the first of its kind on YouTube. This kit's brought to us by PimpMyEV.com. Links will be in the description below. Right now, if you head over to PimpMyEV.com and you go to select this full coverage interior ambient lighting kit for your Tesla Model 3, you can go ahead and select your model year from 2017 to 2023, the region of manufacturer, and your driving position. And when you add it to your cart, use code TOPSHELFTESLA for 15% off your entire purchase at PimpMyEV.com. So go right ahead on the right hand side, type in Top Shelf Tesla, all one word, and you'll notice the savings right away. You'll save $105 off of this kit and 15% off anything else that you add to your kit. We're going to do a quick unboxing here just to kind of go over some of the components. There are a lot of pieces to this installation kit, and overall this installation took us approximately 16 hours to complete over the course of several days. You can break it up into pieces. You don't have to do it all in one sitting. The kit itself is compartmental, meaning you can pick and choose which parts you want to add, which is great. So just looking at the kit overall, there's two LED streaming strips there. You can see the touch control panel for the center console. You have a full dash trim replacement piece here that has streaming LEDs in it as well. And then the same for the 2021 or newer door trims. If you have a 2019 or older, you can use those straight LED strips in the front door, which is what we did in our install. You have the center console horseshoe there and 4 Footwell lights. The kit does come with a roll of fabric tape for cable management purposes. There are some screws. And now the meat and potatoes of this installation is the wiring. There is a ton of wiring in this kit. Overall, there are 6 black major looms and 12 minor looms. The blue are for the streaming LEDs and the yellow are for the standard LEDs. These are your pocket lights, so these illuminate the pockets on your doors. We did not install these in our install because we felt there wasn't really a need. These are your tweeter housing covers, so these are lighted. They will replace the fabric cover on your stock OEM tweeters. Alright, before we begin, let's check out some of the required tools we'll need. So we suggest getting a plastic pry bar, a trim panel removal tool, or a second plastic pry bar. You'll need Torx 10, 15, 20, and 30 bits or drivers. You'll also need an 8mm and 10mm deep socket and the accompanying wrench. We suggest having both a rigid and flexible fishing tape on hand, 4 to 6 feet in length. If you don't have a flexible fishing tape, you could use a piece of Romex or something similar to that. We recommend wire lubricant. a roll of electrical tape, a hot glue gun. The craft type is fine. Make sure you have enough glue sticks as well. And finally, a small bag of wire zip ties. 50 count or more is sufficient. And now let's get into the install. All right, so we're going to begin our installation with the center console breakdown. This is where all of our main components are going to be installed that control the lighting system. So as you can see, alongside the center console on the passenger side, there is this leather trim. It forms a horseshoe around the center console and goes along both sides. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be removing this trim first. It's held in by just pressure fitted clips. So if we pull it apart, it will pop out just like so. We're going to go all the way up and down the side and remove all of those clips. We can do the same thing on the other side. Make sure all the clips are loose and free. Once we get all those clips freed, we're going to pull upwards on that leather shroud, and that also has your charging pad. So we're going to be lifting that up and just sliding it over to the driver's side. There is a wire that connects this leather piece to the center console. So we're going to go ahead and remove that connection. There is a tab that you can see there on the plug. You're just going to lift that tab and pull away from the metal housing there. It should slide right off. We're doing this with one hand here, so it's a little more difficult. This should be pretty easy to remove. So you're going to remove that there, and that will allow you to remove that leather shroud completely from the car. So this is what our center console looks like without that leather piece there. So now you can see there are Torx 20 screws. There are 9 on each side. We do not recommend using a drill for this step. Please use a screwdriver. I'm going to remove all of the screws on this side, including the last one, which is that plastic piece that you see there. And we're going to go ahead and remove the same screws on the other side. There's the same amount. So we've got all those screws removed. Now we're going to go ahead and lift up on this metal trim piece. There are some locking tabs there. If you pull it away from the center console, it should pop right off just like that. We're going to put that to the side as well. Now we're going to be working with the cup holder fascia. Now this is going to take a pry tool. You want to be very careful here. You want to work from the rear corners first, like I'm doing in the video here. Do not pry up on the side of the cup holders there. That is very weak and it will crack if you pull up there. So work from the corners. You also want to be careful here because underneath this cup holder fascia is your card reader, which is what your key card communicates to your vehicle with. If you pull that cable too hard and break it, your car will be immobile. So keep that in mind. Take your time here and just use your pry tool and loosen up the corners. Everything here is just clipped in by pressure fitting clips, and there's the card reader I just referenced. Do not disconnect this cable. Leave it plugged in or you will break your car. Do not disconnect that cable. All right, now we get a look at what's underneath the cup holder, and there is your 12-volt supply, and that's your card reader that I'm tapping. So unless your power is off to the car, do not remove that cable. So what we're going to do here next is we're going to go ahead and power off the car. Now it's very important when you power down the car, do not have anyone or yourself sit in the driver or passenger seat until the power is off, and do not get up from either of those seats. You risk turning the car back on, and if that card reader is disconnected, there is a chance your car will be immobilized. So now that we have the power off, we can go ahead and remove the plug to the card reader. It is just a simple plug and play. There's no clips or anything. And this is your cup holder fascia. We're going to be removing those screws. They are T20 screws. So go ahead and remove those 2 screws. Again, we do not recommend a drill in this instance. Please use a hand tool. There are 2 screws total. And now we'll get into the lighting and main wiring of the center console. So we can go ahead and remove the card reader from the cup holder fascia. And we're going to be removing those brass clips. They are a little difficult to remove. We recommend using a flat pry tool or a Phillips flathead screwdriver rather. This is the replacement fascia with the touchscreen control. So we're going to go ahead and take our card reader and we're going to go and place it onto the new cup holder fascia. You can see there is a little ring at the bottom where that plastic tab will sit over. It's a little difficult to get this card reader placed onto that plastic post. You might need a pry tool just to get it around that little lip. You can see I'm doing that here. Just take your time, do not rush, make sure the car is powered off and you're fine. Once you get that little plastic tab past that post, it should slide right on and click into place. Again, take your time, don't rush through these steps. This is a very critical piece of the car. If you race through this part here, you risk immobilizing your car, so please take your time. Alright, so we've got that on now finally, and we're going to go ahead and take those 2 T20 screws that were removed from the card reader earlier, and we're going to go ahead and fasten those 2 screws to our new control panel fascia. Again, do not use a drill. Alright, so now we can go ahead and reconnect the card reader to the plug. It's the same connection, you're using the same card reader. And now once that is plugged back in, you can power the car back on for the rest of this entire installation. That is the only time the car needs to be powered down. So you can go ahead and just drape it to the side there. Go ahead and take those brass clips that we removed from the OEM fascia and just place them on the remaining posts. Now we're going to remove the 12-volt power source to the cigarette lighter. So just take a flathead screwdriver and just press down that little gray tab inside that brown housing and the plug should come out pretty easily. Just put it to the side. You're going to be plugging in the harness here. So you're going to take the OEM cigarette lighter plug and plug that into the Ambient Lighting Kit's female side, just like that. And then we're going to go ahead and take the male side and plug that back into our cigarette lighter port, and that will basically just tap that power connection, and this is going to power the lighting kit itself. This is not powering the control panel, this is powering the hub and the lights themselves. So now we've got that connected, and there's a little hole there, you can press all of your excess wire down into that opening. This is the control hub. So that power cable has a male connector that's going to be plugged in there, and we're just going to test to make sure everything's working here. You can see the green and red LEDs are illuminated. We're going to put that to the side for now. So now we're going to go to our rear vent. Now I have a rear display. Even if you have a rear vent, you can do the same thing. Just remove that vent cover, just like so. And what you're going to be looking for here is the yellow wire. So it's going to be tucked somewhere between the top of the air vent opening and the 2 screws at the top of the center console. So once you fish around, you'll find it. Sometimes it's taped down a little bit. It's the only wire in there. So you can see here there's the tape, and there is the connection. You're going to be removing that plug separating it, and you're going to be tapping that plug just like we just did with the 12 volt. You're going to get the yellow wire from your ambient lighting kit right there. You're going to place the male end of that into the female end of the OEM harness, and then you're going to take the female side and take the male side from the OEM harness and plug that in just like so. This is where the center console touchscreen control gets its power from. This is solely powering that unit, nothing else. Right, and then you can stuff that wire back down where it was, and you're going to leave the yellow wire out. We're going to be running that up to the center console control panel next. And if at any time you need to pause the video, please do so. Please take your time doing this, don't rush. So now that barrel connector is going to go to the center console control display. So we're going to take that yellow wire, we're going to go under the metal lip of the rear vent there, and we're going to tuck that wire in around that metal bracket, and we're going to go behind the plastic piece there, and we're going to drop it down, and then essentially we're going to be running that yellow wire up alongside the center console as shown. So there's plenty of space there. This is all plastic, so it is a little bit malleable. You can easily pull away that plastic to get that wire down there. You want to try and stuff it as much as you can. Sorry, I'm blocking the camera here. So that wire is going to run there, and we're going to run that yellow wire up into the front of the cup holder, right before those two, you see those two T20 screws there. You're going to run that yellow wire just past those two screws. Right there, you see it turning in. Now, with this kit, you do have to permanently modify your cup holder. So you're going to be cutting the front of that rectangular opening. This has no impact on the operation of the cup holder whatsoever. You're just going to be cutting away that front piece. And this is so that you can get the wires into that opening when you close up the cup holder. So just pull that away there. I used a pair of metal snips here. You could use any Dremel or anything like that. So now you're going to take that yellow power wire from the rear vent and you're going to run it up into the cup holder. We're going to take our power supply from the 12 volt plug. We're going to go under the cup holder here through the opening, and we're going to run that power cable out and underneath. That's going to power that little black hub that all the lights will plug into, and that's going to be installed under the center console. We'll get to that shortly. So now we have our new touchscreen fascia, and you have the 5-pin connector and the power connector. We're going to take our rigid fishing tape and we're going to go ahead and run that fishing tape down to the bottom of the center console and out right before that bolt. So you're going to be taking those two wires, the power supply from the 12 volt and the 5-pin connector from the touchscreen panel, and we're going to go ahead and take our electrical tape. Now when you're fishing these, I don't suggest stacking them on top of one another. Do them in line like I've done here. Make sure you have enough tape above and below your wires, and you're going to pull this very slowly because it is a tight space. So take your time here, and you can help it get down. The opening in the underside of the cup holder is larger than the bottom opening there. So you can see it didn't take much effort to get that cable through. So now I've got both the power and data connection for the center console touchscreen fished down into the lower portion of the center console. This is going to come out right where your feet would be. So now that I've got those two wires running down to the lower portion, you can see there for now I've temporarily placed the lighting control hub, which is the black box with the white plug ports. I've placed that temporarily where it is on the floor on the passenger side. Ultimately, it's going to be going in the underside of the center console. So we can go ahead and place our power cable into the power cable slot. There's only one slot that it will fit. You should get a click just like that. And now we're going to go ahead, and right next to that is the data control port, and that is for the center console touchscreen, where it's going to get its data from and signal. So we're going to go ahead and plug that in as well. Now the reason we're doing this temporarily is so that we can test each component as we install it, and then at the end we'll move everything where it needs to be. So now going back to the center console touchscreen, we're going to take the yellow wire that we ran from the rear vent, and we're going to go ahead and connect the two barrel connectors. There's one on the underside of the control panel. We can go ahead and reaffix those Torx 20 screws into the cup holder. Make sure all your wires are in that notch that we cut out. And you can see that our cup holder fascia and control panel are now in place and installed. Make sure you have the rubber cup holder liner installed. I forgot to put it in there. I had to put it in afterwards. All right, so now we're going to start with the first leg of our wiring. So you're going to start with there are 6 black wire harnesses in the kit. And what we're going to do is we're going to be fishing those through to the other side of the console. So we're going to remove both of those carpeted panels. If you've ever changed your air vents, it's exactly the same process. Just remove those 2 carpeted panels on both sides of the center console. And you can see here I'm using the flexible piece of Romex. It's a little easier than the rigid piece of fishing tape that I had. Now basically what I'm going to be doing is pulling that black fabric tape harness over to the other side to plug it into the hub. So you're going to leave 2 connections going towards the windshield, and then the male connector is going to be the one that gets fished to the other side. So you're going to go ahead and tape that male connector end onto your fishing tape, and we're going to be pulling that to the other side of the console so that we can plug it into the hub. So now we're back on the other side. We're going to go ahead and pull that first wire harness through, just like so. You can go ahead and remove the tape. And now we're going to go to the front side of the control hub, and you can see there are several ports available. You're going to be connecting your 4-pin connector into the back side of that control panel. So there's 2 4-pin connections there. Your black wiring harnesses are going to plug into those 2 ports. Back on the driver's side now, we're going to go ahead and just take the long side of that harness, and we're going to run it up alongside where my hand is, around that bend, and then we're going to run it all the way to the back of the center console towards the rear vent. So we're going to be tucking in that black wire harness alongside the yellow wire that we did earlier. Now we're going to do the same thing on the passenger side. So we don't have to run this under the console because we're working on this side. So we're going to take that one extra open 4-pin port, plug in that black wire harness. And again, we're going to put the end with the 2 connections towards the windshield, and then the long single connection, we're going to do the same thing we just did on the driver's side. We're going to go ahead and take that loom, and we're going to go up around the top of the bend of the center console like I'm doing here. And again, this is all plastic, so you can bend and tug. Just, don't muscle it too much. But essentially you want to give yourself enough slack that you can get that wire that I'm working with right there, that single long run. That is going to power your center console LEDs for the horseshoe trim. So you're going to have one connection on each side of the center console at the rear vent. So go ahead and make sure that wire is nice and tucked in, should not be visible. And now you can see that the wire is tucked in, and at the back side of my center console I have the 2 female ports for my center console horseshoe ring. So now we're going to go ahead and start to reassemble the trim of the center console. So we're going to take that metal or aluminum horseshoe ring and we're going to snap that back into place. Now the trick to this is to start with the white plastic piece at the front and then work your way back. That white plastic piece at the top will clip in place. You'll feel it lock in. Also make sure that your sliding door operates correctly before you start closing everything up. It shouldn't be catching or rubbing on anything. So once you got that clipped in, you're going to go ahead and make sure your trim is locked in. And now we've gone ahead and got our horseshoe LED lighting component. So this is going to sit right on top of the metal trim piece that we just installed. So the lighting is actually built into this. It's laser cut and it sits right on top as perfect fit. And now once you have that lined up, you're going to go ahead and start to replace those T20 screws on each side. Now my advice here is as you go along, press down, as you see I'm doing here, so that the LED lighting component is firmly secured onto those screws so it doesn't wobble or bend. You can see there it's really a perfect fit. There should be no gaps, no breaks. It should look just like it belongs there. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and plug in our passenger side. Make sure it works. Then we're going to just go ahead and stuff that wire in that little gap there at the rear of the center console. It won't impede the operation of the armrest or the cover. There's plenty of space there. So just like that. And now we'll take a quick look. And you can see our ambient lighting is working. So far so good. So now we're going to go ahead and take our leather trim piece with the charging mat. Now again, I'm doing this while filming, so my mobility was a little limited, but you're going to go ahead and reconnect that plug that we removed earlier. Make sure you plug that back in or you won't have any wireless charging. And then just simply line up the clips along the leather arms and make sure you press them in firmly. They should click into place. Sometimes they'll give a loud click. All right, now we're going to go into our dashboard lighting and wiring. And again, at any point, if you need to stop and rewind, please do so. So the dashboard does require some hard modification. You're going to have to remove the lower silver trim piece from your dash panel. So the easiest way to do this is take a flat head screwdriver, or a flat pry tool if you have, and you want to get underneath those metal tabs. Now this is very, very soft aluminum and plastic, so you want to be gentle and take your time. You should be able to remove these pieces without damaging them, so they can go back at some point if needed. There are two pieces, so on each side of the steering wheel are two separate pieces, and you can see here I'm alternating between the pry tool and the flathead screwdriver. Just work your way across, and they should pop off once they separate. And then you want to go ahead and just pull up gently, and then you want to turn that corner, as you can see I'm doing here, and that will unhinge the edge of the trim piece, just like that. Now save those pieces, and now we're going to go into our kit and we're going to get our new lighted replacement pieces. Now there are several ways you can do this. For this installation, I chose to use a hot glue gun, and I just cleaned up the tabs that were melted from the OEM installation. So if you press down, there are two little tabs. You can see them on the edges of each of those pins. They will bend a little bit and give you a little bit of security. And then what I did here was I just pressed down and I injected some hot glue into each of those openings and let it cool before moving to the next one. So again, and you can put as much glue as you need to in here. This is just craft hot glue sticks. Nothing permanent, nothing that is not undoable, I should say. And again, take your time. If you feel like there's a spot that's raised, go back and just glue it down more. If you need to add more glue, that's fine. Let it cool and let it set before moving on. I sped this up a little bit just for time constraints, but you can see I'm just injecting as much glue as I can fit in each of those openings. And this did a really great job in holding that new trim piece in place. You can see there are already pre-installed wire connections in this trim piece. That's because the wiring is already, the LEDs rather, are already loaded in that new trim piece, and they are streaming LEDs, so they move to music, and they will do rainbow effects and things like that. Again, just letting the glue set. Get rid of those glue spider webs. Just keep constant pressure. You can see there, it looks great. No gaps. Everything's lined up. And you can't really tell from the video, but the laser carved LED lights are there. So now we're going back to the car, and we're going to be running the first LED connection up along the accelerator cavity there and the brake pedal cavity. We're going to be using our piece of Romex again. This time we're going to be going through the larger channel at the front of the center console, just because there's more room there to work with. We're going to be running a lot of wires through there during the installation. So for this section, we're going to be using the blue, brown, and green 3-pin wires. You want to take one of the longer ones here, and you're going to piggyback that with a second one. So your two longer ones are going to go on this run. So you see I have one connection there and a second one there. So you're going to be running those two wires up to those two connections. So I'm going to be just fishing those two blue, brown, and green wires to the hub. I've got those run through. Now what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be working around the carpeted lining behind the brake and accelerator. So the way I did this here was I just draped in one of the corners the wire, and that just allowed me to be able to work a little more freely. And you can just tuck this behind the carpet. There is a push pin behind the accelerator that you can't see in this clip. You can remove that if you need to. It's not necessary. If you can get the wire behind it, that's fine. And you can see I'm just running the wires. You do not want any wires anywhere near your accelerator or brake pedal that could obstruct them from operating. So make sure, take your time here and make sure those are really tucked well behind that carpet. You could even go back lower. So I've got them down behind the carpet, and I'm going to run them up alongside the dead pedal here. I'm just making sure I have all of that slack pulled. Like I said earlier, I don't want any risk of any wires becoming stuck on the brake or gas, or accelerator, I should say. All right, so now what I'm doing here is I'm taking those two wires and I'm just finger tucking them up alongside the trim panels there. You don't have to remove the trim panels yet in that section if you don't want to. And I'm just going to do a quick test and make sure that the LED panels are working by plugging them in. You could do this at any point. And now I'm going to be running those two connections to the side. And now what I'm going to be doing is the same thing on the passenger side. I'm going to take another single brown, green, and blue wire. And I'm going to be running that from the third dash connection. So there's 3 total. And here I'm just running this down, tucking that wire alongside the trim. You do have to remove those little caps on the end. I didn't cover those in this video because I'm assuming that if you're doing this installation yourself, you know how to remove those 2 caps. So again, we're just hand tucking that wire. It's a very thin wire, so just take your time. Don't pull it too hard. And what I'm doing here is I'm just getting it up and behind the glove box. You can see here. I have other accessories connected to my computer here, so that's all that stuff that's dangling. If you don't have any of those accessories, you wouldn't see any of those wires. So disregard those big black wire looms that are hanging down. That's all other accessories I have. So again, same thing as the driver's side. I'm just running that wire, that single blue, brown, and green wire along the carpet here. I'm going to be tucking it behind the carpet so it's hidden. Again, don't be afraid to pull on the carpet. Nothing's going to happen to your car. And again, this is, for me, this is a little more difficult, but just because of the amount of accessories I have installed. You shouldn't have this much difficulty working around all those wires. Now go ahead and tuck that down. And you could always tidy up once you get the connection made. That's fine too. This is meant to be a guide and not a Bible, so this is just our interpretation of the installation for this product. Alright, so now I've got the third wire going under the carpet there. Again, there's another push pin that you can remove if you need to. And what I'm doing here is I'm just tucking that connection, that wire rather, and now I've got all 3 of the dash panel blue, green, and brown wires, and you can plug them into any of those available ports on the back side. So all of the blue, green, and brown wires will plug in on this side, and the black wiring harnesses will plug into each other going forward. The only 2 that are plugging into the hub are already done. We did those in the center console. Alright, so now our dash panel is complete, and you can see the LEDs are working great. So far so good. So if you wanted to do just the center console and the dash panel, you would be done. Alright, so now we're going to move on to our footwells. So we're going to cover the lighting and wiring. There are 4 in total, 2 in the front and 2 in the rear. So we're going to go ahead and remove those plastic panels from under the passenger side. and we're going to push out our existing Footwell lights. Now it doesn't matter which ones you use from the kit, all four are the same. We're going to make sure that we run the wire through just like that, and we're going to pop it into place. It is a direct fit. There's no gaps. It fit perfectly, and we're going to leave that wire just like so. So now earlier we ran those two connections to the center console. We left those two ports there. So we're going to take one of those available female ports on that black loom, and we're going to connect our Footwell light to that, and you can see it's working right away. Just like so. Nice and bright. Now we're going to take the second black loom from the third black loom, and we're going to connect that male to the female connection. So now we're running an extension, and that's going to run alongside this pillar trim here and go towards the B pillar and under the seat for our seatback lighting and the rear footwells. So we can go ahead and reinsert the trim piece here. This footwell is installed, and again I have a lot of other accessories installed, so you shouldn't have to deal with as much wiring as I have here. Just do your best here to tuck everything up. Take your time. Like I mentioned earlier, it is a tedious installation, but it is definitely worth it in the long run. So essentially what you want to have is the footwell connection should be above that panel, hidden, and then the extension leg that we just connected is going to run alongside the pillar trim. So you can see here I'm just tidying up. So I'm going to take that new extension leg that we just did, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to run it behind these connections here, and that just keeps it from rattling and keeps it in place. Just again, take your time, don't pull too hard. And in a nutshell, what you're doing here is you're basically just adding wiring to the entire car with these black looms. So these are like your master wiring control panels, wiring control harnesses that all of your components will connect to. And you can run this any way you see fit, whatever is the tidiest and neatest for you. There's no real set way. Just don't leave anything exposed. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave one female connector there. That is going to be for our door connections. And we're going to run these two connections here. And then we're going to add another black harness. And we're going to run that to the rear of the car. So what we're going to do here is we're going to place one female connector, and we're going to snake that under our seat. There is a Velcro gap that we're going to utilize to get that wire under the track of the seat. You want to make sure that you go under the track and not over it, otherwise you will cut this wire. So when you're tucking that female connection in, you want to make sure to utilize that Velcro space under the seat. You can see there I'm making my way to it. It's very obvious and very evident, you can't miss it. And that split goes all the way under the seat, and it's there specifically for wiring purposes. So we'll take our next footwell and we're going to just move the seat up a little bit, and we want to raise it up as high as we can so we have some room to work. And first we're just going to test the light. It's working good. And now we're going to go ahead and go under the track in that Velcro space, and we're going to pull our footwell. Now these footwells you're going to have to affix to the underside of the seat with the supplied Velcro, double-sided Velcro tape that comes in the kit. There's no rear footwells, whether you have premium interior or a non-premium interior. Unfortunately, there's no rear footwell lighting stock, so you're just going to have to stick them to the underside of the seat. You could wire tie them too if you'd like, but the Velcro is pretty good. It works well. And that's how you're going to affix it. You could go as far under the seat as you like. Now we'll go over to the passenger side. We're going to remove that footwell trim just like we did earlier. This one will have a T20 screw in it as well, so make sure you're removing that. We're going to get that existing footwell light out, and we're going to go wire first. Press that into place just like so. Now we're going to follow the same routine that we did on the passenger side. So we're going to go ahead and take our black loom. We had those two female connections. We're going to plug one footwell light into one of those female connections, and then we're going to do the same wiring on the other side. So you're going to pause here, and you're going to go ahead and repeat the installation on the driver's side footwell before you continue on. So the process is the same. You're going to add those two black wiring harnesses, tuck them along the pillar trim, go through the Velcro canal under the seat, and connect your footwell lights. And when you're ready, you can go ahead and continue on. The next segment is going to be our seat backs, the lighting and wiring. Now for this installation, because we have custom seat backs in our Model 3, we couldn't utilize the plastic shells that come with this kit. So what we ended up doing was removing the light emitters from those plastic trim pieces that you see here, and we ended up making our own lighting element for our seat backs. So if you have the stock black seat back shells, then you can utilize the two seat back kits without any issue. If you have custom seat backs, then you could do something like we did here, which was removing the emitters from that plastic frame and just connecting them to some lighting tubing that we had. Otherwise, the installation is going to be the same. This was just the only option we had for this kit. So you can see you have a light emitter on both ends. Want to maximize the light. And for us, we used this tubing that had the little plastic fin that we were able to wedge in the seat back. So there's our custom seat back. You can see it's a little different than the stock ones, which is why we had to make our own. Now what we did here is you can see the fishing tape. We're going to be connecting two lighting elements on each side of the seat. So what we need to do is we're going to be fishing our light emitter connection from underneath the seat. So if you remember from the previous step, we had that one female connection that we left open. So what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be taking my fishing tape. The rigid one is better here. And again, I'm going through that Velcro canal, and I'm taking my two female connections that are available on that leg of the black wiring harness that we ran, and we're going to be sliding that under. It's going to be a little difficult because in the Model 3 there's very little room under the seat track, but you can see there we were able to pull it through. And we're going to bring those two female connections to the underside of the seat. And that's what we're going to be connecting our seatback light emitters to. So it's going to connect right into our rapidly growing lighting system here. So we can go ahead and remove those two female connections from our fishing tape. And unfortunately in this kit there are no instructions, so which is why we wanted to make this video, and all of the labels are in Chinese, so not much help there either. Alright, so the first step we're going to do here with the seat backs is we're going to take either one of the female connections that's available, and we're going to start the process of getting our emitters, those yellow cables, down. You can see there I connected the tubing just to make sure the lights work properly, and they do. We get a thumbs up. And I'm going to start draping those over the top. So for our kit we had to use adhesive across the entire tube just because of the shape of our seat backs. If you're using the plastic shells that came with the kit, they already have adhesive on them, and it's more than sufficient for the install. So we're going to go ahead in here and we're just making sure our tubing is far down enough where it won't come loose. If you're using the kit, the shells from the kit, you don't have to do this step because your kit will slide right onto the black shells. Now, while we're watching this section, if you have the stock black seatback shells, you'll have to pull up your headrest to remove them. It's much easier to lower them to put the shell on than try to fix it around the edge. So to remove the headrest, if you check out our ventilated seat video, I'll leave a link to that in this video. You can see how to remove the headrest to get that shell off. They'll just fall down once you pull the headrest up. Those two poles from the headrest actually keep the seat back shell in place. Alright, so you can see there we're just really tidying it up, and this step for us was a lot longer than if you had stock seat backs, just because of the larger filament and larger seat back. Alright, so now we finally have our light installed on the seat back, and now what I'm doing here is I am going and getting the two hooks from the underside of the leather wrap for the seat back. So if you have the stock seat backs, this will be the same thing for you. And now I finally going to be able to go ahead and get that emitter snake down. So the idea here is, regardless of what seat back you have, what you're going to be doing is getting that yellow and white wire to come out the bottom of the seat there. So you can see what I'm doing here is I'm just prying that seat back away so that I can tuck the lighting strip underneath. And again, take your time here, don't rush. We gave ourselves a lot of extra work in this step, but we wanted to make it look nice. So now that we've got everything connected up, we're going to start the process of removing the 3M tape and affixing the lighting strip to the seat back. Now that we know that everything is working and the connections are good to go. You can already see how clean this installation looks without the red tape. You can barely see the lighting strip. And on the white seat backs, the lights really pop right off of them. It looks so nice at night. So again, if you're using the stock kit lighting shells for the seat backs, you would already be done with this section. Alright, just make sure your lighting strips are properly affixed, just like so. Looks good. Clean. And so now you see there, I got the two emitters running down. I just draped the hooks for the leather shroud from the bottom, just so I could work and film. And now what I'm going to be doing is taking those two emitters that you can see hanging there, and I'm going to take those two female connections from our black main harness, and I'm going to go ahead and connect both sides. Doesn't matter which one goes where, as long as you connect both sides, it's fine. And now you can see our seat backs are lighting up nice. Alright, so you're going to pause here, and essentially we're going to repeat the entire installation on the passenger seat back. Once you've done that, we can continue on. In this next part, we're going to be working on the front door tweeters. We're going to remove them and prep them with the ambient lighting fascia. So to do that, we're going to go to our front passenger or driver side door. We're going to take our flat pry tool, and we're going to go ahead and slide it underneath the door tweeter. And with a twisting upward motion, we're going to go ahead and release the tweeter from the door, being careful not to pinch that wire, and we're just going to disconnect it. Now for this kit, we had a pair of 4D tweeters which we installed instead of these covers, but I wanted to show in this video how to assemble the tweeters for this installation. So the kit comes with this lighted cover. So you're going to take your OEM tweeter, you can remove it from your door, just pry it upwards, and you can see the lighting element, the wire is going to run down into the door. There are 4 clips that hold the fabric cover onto the plastic tweeter housing. So that's what we're looking to remove. So what I used here was a pick, a auto pick, and the pry tool. And you can see there's 1, 2, 3, and then 4 retaining clips that actually lock this guy into place. So once you remove that mesh cover, you can see where it locks on there. You can leave the tweeter installed, you don't have to take it out, and you're going to go ahead and take your lighted cover and you're just going to clip it into place. Now the easiest way to do this here is to use that post as a guide, that long post on the lighted piece. There's a hole on the plastic shell that post fits through. You can see right there. As soon as you marry those two up and then you give it a good press, the lighted housing should click right onto the tweeter shell. There you go. Your tweeter connection from the car will go there. The ambient lighting plug will go down into the door itself, and that is how you assemble the tweeter. Very simple. Hang on to that cover, do not discard it, and if you need the part number to replace it, there it is, F200 1820. It's tweeter cloth right or left. And now this would be ready to be installed in the car. The last thing you want to do is take the make sure your brass clips are affixed. And when you hook that tweeter on, you want to grab that metal bar on the door and make sure it's affixed and slide it straight down. And we'll show you that later in the video. Next section is going to be the front door panels, lighting and wiring. This is going to be the most tedious, lengthy part, just for the sheer amount of time it takes. So to break down the door, passenger side and driver side, we're going to remove the reflector here. Just get a pry tool and pull it away. You can see there's a T30 Torx 30 bolt right there. We're using a drill here. Remove that screw. Now the second one is going to be next to your pocket light. That one is exposed. There's nothing covering it. It's in the center of the door, right underneath the window switches. And then the third screw is going to be under this panel. Just take a little pry tool and go from underside and just pry it forward. It'll pop right off, just like so. And then you can see the third Torx 30 screw is there. I loosened this one up a bit so that you can see where it is because it's kind of angled. So for this video I did pre-loosen it. And that's it. The 3 screws are all that holds the door panel on. And there are retaining clips that go all around the door that you're going to want to go ahead and take note of. The easiest way to get the door panel loose, take your pry tool in the lower left hand corner and you're going to twist it upwards until you hear a pop. Once you get one of them loose, then the rest of them should be able to be pulled apart. Just work your way around the door panel. Don't use the pocket of the door as leverage. Put your fingers underneath and just pull forward. Just be careful because sometimes the door panel will kind of fly off unexpectedly depending how hard you're pulling. So use a little muscle but not too much. You can see it came loose there. So now once you have all those clips loose, the door card or door panel actually sits on a ledge by the window that it latches onto. So in order for you to remove it, oh, there's one more pin here I missed. There you go. And you can see the door panel came flying off, which is okay. But the door panel rests along the sill of the window, so you want to make sure you're pulling upward when you're removing it. So just get something to rest the door panel on so you can work on it. This is the panel side itself. You can see the sound deadening material and the retaining clips as I'm pointing them out. For this installation, you don't have to remove any plugs from the door panels. It's unnecessary. You can leave everything connected. You can kind of just get an idea of where those retaining clips marry up with the door. So we're going to go ahead and remove the door woofer. Now I have aftermarket speakers, but your speakers will look the same. There are 4 8mm bolts here that you're going to go ahead and remove. And these are the Alpine speakers that we installed in a previous video. So if you're interested in those, check those out on our channel. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and remove the woofer from the door. And you do need to just disconnect that green connection there. Just press down on that tab and separate it. It's pretty easy to do, just like that. All right, now the tricky part. We're going to go ahead and go into our door jamb, and we're going to pry this rubber grommet out of that opening. This is where your wiring from the car enters into the door panel. So you can see there's a whole bundle of wires in there. And now we're going to do the same thing in the top connection. This is a different type of fitting. So there is a rubber gasket that goes around a plastic retainer. So the plastic retainer has 2 gripping teeth. With a flat pry tool, you can just press them to release it, just like that. And that will give you access to the cabin of the car. So you can see I'm taking my fishing tape there from the inside of the cabin, and there it comes. So now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be running our extensions from the cabin into the doors. This is where the wire lubricant comes in. I cut this in because I forgot to add it earlier, but what we're going to be doing here is taking that connection from the black harness, and we're going to be taking our yellow and white cables first and running those into the door. Now you're going to be fishing two separate sets of wires through the door, and unfortunately you can't do them at the same time because of the lack of space. So we're going to start with the yellow wire that has a split end, so it's like a Y shape. So there are two female connections on one end, those go on the door side, and then there's one male connection on the other end that goes to the car side. So we're going to take the male connection that's going to be going into the cabin, and we're going to be fishing from the door side out into the cabin. And for this, you really want to make sure you tape this really well. Give yourself about 2 extra inches of tape past the connector, as the connector is a little bit large. This is a bit of a difficult process, fishing these wires through this rubber tube, just because of the amount of wiring that's already in there. You really want to take your time here. Use as much of the lubricant as you need to. It does not hurt the wiring at all. It actually helps get that fishing tape through. So you can see there, I'm moving the fishing tape through the rubber grommet. You can use your hand to assist. If you use something rigid, you can feel the end of it and kind of push it along, because sometimes it will get stuck in those little ridges in the rubber tubing. So just pull slowly, and eventually you'll start to see your tape, your blue electrical tape, or whatever color electrical tape you used, peeking out of the top of that rubber grommet, and you can just help it through, make sure it's not caught on anything. And now we've got our wire, our male side of this long wire, into the cabin. So we can remove the electrical tape, and we're going to be running that wire into this female connector of the black harness that we had one connection left on. So we can go ahead and connect that up. That's going to supply our power and signal to the lighting elements in the tweeter, and if you choose to install them, the pocket lights. With these connections, I always add a little bit of electrical tape just to secure the connection in place. It's a good practice to do this on all of your connections, just to avoid any future problems where something gets loose and then you have to kind of diagnose where it is. So a little electrical tape goes a long way here. Just make sure you wrap both sides of the wires. Give it a little press, good. So now we're going to go back to the control panel side, and we're going to be adding in the blue, green, and brown wires, which will supply the signal and power to the streaming bars for the doors. So whether you're using the 2021 door panel kit or the streaming bars, this is the same installation practice. You're going to take 2 of these brown, green, and blue wires, and you're going to couple them. And you're going to take your fishing tape, either your rigid or flexible one, doesn't matter, and you're going to be pulling from the control panel side the female connection, which is the open connection, and you're going to pull that through the large cavity under the center console. Again, take your time, make sure you have all your wire pulled. Once I get back on the other side, I'll pull that slack. You can see I've got that there. So the mantra with these blue, brown, and green wires is they have to be plugged directly into the control box. So now we're going to have to fish this wire into the door cavity just like we did with the yellow wire. Using the same exact technique, we're going to be connecting the female end of that blue, brown, green wire to our fishing tape. You can see it there. And again, we want to make sure we use at least 1 to 2 inches of tape above and below the wire connection there, as this is now even tighter than it was before because we've already added another wire. So you want to make sure add as much lubricant as you need to. It really will help out a lot. And this time we're going to be going from the cabin side into the door cavity. So it's kind of the reverse of what we did with the yellow wire. So you're going from top to bottom as opposed from bottom to top. And again, just work it down through that rubber tube. It's tight. This is a pretty time consuming process here, but definitely take your time. It will go through. There's room. Okay, and make sure that you go through that plastic ring. Don't go around it, because then you'll have to redo this. So we're going to pull our excess into the door cavity here. And now what I'm going to do is just tidy up that wire. Again, the same way we did earlier. We're going to go behind the carpeting panel, and I'm going to go ahead and just put some electrical tape on this coupling here. Again, to make sure that nothing separates during the install and for future proofing. A little bit of tape goes a long way. Make sure you tape both sides of that connection, just like so. And now what I'm doing here is I'm just removing the tape from the fishing line so that I can work with the blue, brown, and green wire that we just fished through. So now all of your connections that come through into the door panel, you're going to run them up and behind the bracket for the door woofer. So you'll see what I'm doing here. You're just going to pull it up. It's not attached to the door. It's just, it's kind of the edge of that panel, so it's loose. And you're going to just pull that wire up. Make sure it's not in any of the holes. And we'll tidy those up in a second. So we've got that pulled out from the woofer opening and behind the woofer bracket. Now I'm going to take a zip tie and just place it around those two wires that we ran previously, the yellow and now the blue. And now what we're going to do is we're going to track our blue, green, and brown wire, and we're going to follow the OEM harness and just zip tie it along. This is going to prevent any rattling or noise after the installation is complete. You can use as many zip ties as you need to here. Overdo it if you need to. I might have overdone it here. That's fine. You really want to make sure these wires are not moving around, because they will rattle in the door otherwise. That's why I recommend at least 50 pieces of these small wire ties. You can get them at Harbor Freight for about $1.50 or Amazon. All right, so now once you get to this bend here, what I did was I ran about a 5 or 6 inch length down, and I zip tied it at the bottom of that bend. So what I left myself with was enough for me to connect the wire to the door streaming LED bar that we're going to be installing next. So just leave yourself enough slack that you can open and close that panel if you have to take it off the door again. You don't want to leave it too short. So leave yourself about 18 inches on the end after that last zip tie. All right, so that's where I want to have that enough wire there. So 18 to 24 inches is more than enough. If you have any excess, you can do what I'm doing here. Just fold it back up and zip tie it back to that same line. And this way, if you ever need to let any out, you have some excess right there as well. Now, as a reminder, for our kit, we have a 2019 Model 3. We updated the center console to the refresh, but we did not update the door panels. So we're going to be installing the straight LED light strips in our front driver and passenger doors. All right, so that wire is now run. So now for the light strip, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking our pry tool. Now there's 3M tape on this bar, but to be honest, it's so tight of a fit, you don't really need to use the tape. You could leave the cover on there. You're going to be running that wire under this gap. So we're going to take our pry tool, and now the top of the door card is kind of like a cap, so you can pry it up and lift it around all the way. So that's what I'm trying to get to here, is just you gotta kind of be diligent with it. And my pry tool is kind of getting marred up, so you can see right there, I lifted it up and the wire went right underneath, and it's completely hidden. It doesn't cause any buckling or anything like that. So that's what you're aiming to do. If you're doing the LED strip, you can see my connector is sticking out the back of the door card. And now I'm going to go ahead and install that strip in this gap in the door card. So again, it's the same premise as the side. We're going to take our pry tool and lift up that cap, and you can see if I just work from the edge and lift up enough, the wire kind of goes right in on its own. It finds enough space. Once you get to the actual strip, just be careful because these are acrylic, so you want to be a little more delicate. Once you start the strip going in, you should be able to press it in by hand, just like I'm doing here. Just put a little pressure at the top, angle it back, and you should be able to just wedge it right in that little gap. It should be a nice tight fit. If you find that it's loose, you can use the adhesive that's on there. We did not need it at all. So there you go. It's a nice clean look, very minimal, and again, no need to disassemble anything on the door card. This is also a streaming LED, so it will do rainbow effects, solid lights, and some other streaming effects as well. It will match the dash panel, which is really cool. All right, so you can see there, nice clean install. You want to try to line up your LED strips with the dash when the door is closed. So get of where you're lining up when you close the door so that it looks as one continuous light bar, if that makes sense. So for us, it was just past the corner of the, about 1.5 inches past the corner of the white trim inside the door card. All right, so now we have our male connector for the light bar, and we've tucked it in this little corner in the door card. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to free it up a little bit so that I can make that connection to the brown, green, and blue wire that we ran. So there's a little notch here that we're just going to pry it out just like that. Connected it. We're going to go ahead and clean up these zip ties. Just cut the ends off as close as you can to the cinch. Don't leave any of those out. Those will rattle for sure. So make sure you cut all those away. And that's how our wire is going to look. You can see, go right up alongside. You can see we've got plenty of slack there to make that connection. And with this connection as well, we're going to go ahead and just free it up a little bit so that we can go ahead and put some tape on there to keep it from coming apart. And with this connection, you definitely want to make sure you put a lot of tape around that edge where the wire is going to be placed back in. So that little gap that's right behind my thumb is where this wire connection is going to be sitting. So you want to make sure you get enough tape on there so that it doesn't rattle around inside there, just like so. And we're going to pry back that little plastic lip and just stuff that connection right there. All right, now we're going to go ahead and we can replace our door tweeter. And for the tweeter light connection, you can see the yellow wire going up alongside the blue, green, brown wire. That's just going to go straight up to where the tweeters are. And that's going to make your... For the next step, what we're going to do is take our ambient lighting wire that we ran through the door grommet channel and up through the door woofer opening. So we're going to take that female connection there, and we're going to take our male connection from the newly fasciated tweeter, and what we're going to do is connect that yellow wire, the male end, to the female end that we ran alongside the door there. So for now, I'm temporarily going to mount the tweeter so that you can see a demonstration of the lighting. As a reminder, we did not use these tweeters in our installation, so our final product is not going to show these tweeters. So we're going to go ahead and connect that, and you can see right away that the ambient lighting kit is now working. It is very bright. We have it set right now to purple, so that's what you're seeing here. We'll shut the light off so you can get a better look at it at night. Now this is the lowest level of brightness, so these tweeters are very bright, and now we switched it over to a streaming mode, and you can see that the tweeter lights do pulse with the ambient lighting system. Looks very beautiful. We had the 4D tweeters on hand, so we wanted to use those in the install as well, but I wanted to just demonstrate what the kit tweeters will look like. What we'll do next is we're going to go ahead and we're going to take that tweeter off of its temporary mount there, and I just want to give you a visual of how the wiring will look when it's inside the door and the door panel is back on the door itself. So we'll disconnect the tweeter real quick. Just put it to the side. And if I take the tweeter and I place it on top of the door panel as if it was installed, this is how the wiring would look. So your yellow cable is going to go through the opening at the top of the door there, and then you have the two little pressure clips that will lock the tweeter in place onto the door card, and then if you remember, there's the black tab that locks onto that metal hook on the door frame itself, where we just hooked it onto temporarily. So you would go ahead and connect your speaker wire connection and your ambient lighting connection, and that's all set. Tweeter connection. The other end of the yellow cable, we tied it up and left it in the door woofer opening. That would be for your pocket light. Since we didn't use it, we just zip tied it to the harness in there, so you can do the same. Just tighten it up so it's not banging around. One thing you also want to make sure of is that when you're closing up the door, before you put the panel back on, open and close your door to make sure that the wires that we snaked in from the cabin are not interfering with the regulator for the door, for the window rather. So we're going to go ahead and replace the rubber grommet at the bottom of the door. Just go ahead and stuff the little oversized lip, and it should lock into place pretty easily. Just make sure you go on the front side too, and ensure that that isn't completely seated. And then on the top side, it's a little more tricky. So you want to get the rubber lip around this plastic ring. If you've ever worked on your trunk before, it's the same type of fitting for the trunk seal. So just go ahead, if you have to take the ring out, you can use your pry tool again, to pop it out. It's sometimes easier to put the rubber grommet on the ring and then reinstall the ring as opposed to trying to fit it. For me, I got it on the first try. So to reinstall the door panel, we're going to hang it from the edge of the opening where the window would be, and you could just leave it loosely hanging there. And what you're going to do is you want to find the sweet spot where these clips, I'm going to try and zoom in here so you can see them, the black plastic clips that go into those openings. Once they're lined up, you should feel the door card kind of slide into place. When you feel that, then you're in the right spot. And then what you're going to do is just simply go around the edge of the door, starting from the outside like I'm doing here, and just press the door card into the door, and you should feel those pressure clips lock into place. There's about 6 or 7 of them in total. Just make sure you go all the way around the edge of the door. There should be nothing loose. Everything looks good here, and you can see there's no gaps in the door card. It's secure up against the side of the door, and we'll take a look on the other side of the door as well, just to make sure there's no gaps, and everything looks good there as well. Now we've gone back to our 4D tweeters because the door card is now reinstalled. So even if you were using the tweeters from the kit, essentially what you would be doing here is just taking them, and you're going to mount that plastic tab on the back. You're going to hang it on that silver bracket, that hook. So you're going to start above, and then once you get it on the top of that hook, you're going to just press downward and lock it into place, just like so. And then you go ahead and reaffix the 3 screws that we removed earlier. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the light strip from the top of the door, and as you can see, as I move the camera upwards on an angle, the light becomes invisible, which is ideal. So if you have any light peeking out when you have the camera looking straight down, you can take your flat pry tool and just gently push that light bar into that gap. So now for the passenger side, we're going to repeat that same exact process. But first, we're going to go ahead and connect our male connections to our control board. And we're going to be going the same way out of the cabin into the door frame. So you can pause here. You're going to repeat the same exact installation section on the passenger door. Do both the yellow and blue wires. And once you've completed running the 2 sets of wires into the door, then we can proceed to the final steps of the installation. Okay, so for the Model 3, we want to make sure that our controller panel with all our wire connections is stored vertically alongside the center console, just like this. Make sure all your wires are behind the metal bracket there. So we're just about done with our installation here. We're going to run through our checklist. So just make sure that all of your components that are installed are working. You want to go ahead and secure any more loose wires that you have left. Go ahead and close up any trim panels that are still open. You want to go ahead and make sure that the door gaskets that we removed earlier are back in place and properly seated. And then lastly, go ahead and grab yourself a drink. You did this. Thanks for hanging out with me for a long time. I appreciate it. Make sure you smash that like button, subscribe, comment. I'm happy to give any advice, any help. If you're stuck, please comment below. Check out PimpMyEV.com, and let's go ahead and check out some of the features of this kit. Alright, so now that we've got our ambient lighting kit fully installed, finally, let's go over some of the features of the kit. And the features are pretty straightforward. Everything is done from the control panel here. You have a power button, you have your color wheel, and then you have this directional button, which will Up will adjust your brightness, down will lower your brightness, and then touching left and right will cycle through your modes. So we'll start here at the color wheel. So the color wheel is very self-explanatory. Whatever color you would like, as you drag it, you can see the color will change in the car all across the board. When you go into the full brightness, this is full brightness. If I lower it 1 level, 2 level, and that's fully lowered. Back up. So there's 3 brightness settings. Now if I go over to the right button, this puts your streaming bars on. So your LEDs that are streamers will activate. So as you can see, they all sync up. And the ones that are not streamers, like the tweeters and the center console and your footwells, those will just stream different colors while the streaming lights are going along the doors. So the first streaming mode is the rainbow effect, which corresponds to the red tab here. Now if you go into the next tab, which is purple, this will stream little puddles of light. Now you can select this color by going back to the color wheel and picking, let's say we want to do blue, and then we go back to our puddles, pools of light, and now you can see the blue is working, and at the same time the footwells are solid. Now if we go to the blue tab, you can see it's a different effect. If we go to the cyan tab, that gives you a whatever color from the color wheel and green mix. You cannot change the green. The green is permanent. You can see it's like a little twinkling effect. Pretty cool. And if we go back to the green, now you have a moving effect. You can see that the way that I've installed the streaming bars, the lights all go to the corner, which looks pretty cool. You can flip them if you like. I chose to install them this way because I like the effect going towards the dash. So that's the green. Now yellow, this one will build up dots until it's a full bar. Pretty cool, they shoot out of the corner together. And again, the footwells will stay steady. And then back to your rainbow. Now, the other effect here, if I go to the center, you'll see there's a thumbprint. If I touch the thumbprint, that will put me in music mode. Now, as I'm talking, you can see that the microphone is activating the lights. So if I was to yell loudly, you can see that the microphone is picking up the sounds and all of the lights will flicker to music. This is really cool if you're parked at a show or something and you want to bang some music. Driving, it's a little distracting, but nonetheless pretty cool. The microphone is built into the center console control panel. No external microphone. And if we go back into here, we go back over to our color wheel. I'm a purple guy. If you follow the channel, you know I like purple. And then the last feature is the power button. So if we tap it once, it will shut down the control panel. And you can see that the power button is kind of like in a breathing state. And then if we touch it again, the color wheel will come back on. Now if we press and hold, the color wheel will shut down. It will breathe. If we hold it down long press, the color wheel will come back on, and now you see the lights are off. So you can totally turn off the entire system while you're driving. let's say your kids are in the car and it's distracting for them, or you have passengers, they don't like the lights, you can do that. You can still shut off the control panel with the lights off as well, just by tapping. So long press will shut the system off, short press will turn off the control panel on and off, and you'll have that breathing power button so that you know where to initialize the control panel. So to turn it back on, do a long press. So to turn it back on, what we're going to do is we're going to press the power button once. That brings us back the color wheel. And to turn back the lights, we're just going to pick a color. And there you have it. The lights will come back on. And they do come back on in a low brightness setting. So if you had them set to fully bright, they will come back on in a low brightness setting. But you could just raise the brightness up. And now let's go ahead and finalize this video with my final thoughts and overall impressions. Now it's time for my final thoughts. I just want to go over some of the pros and cons of the kit. There are obviously more pros than cons, but I like to go over both before we wrap up the video. So the biggest pro for me is the aesthetic look and the touch control panel. For me, it looks totally OEM. The lighting kit itself is beautiful. The synchronized streaming lights are incredible. They are a wow factor times 10. I've gotten nothing but compliments since I've installed this unit. The lights themselves are very bright and very visible. And one of the things that I love about this kit is that it turns on and off when you enter and exit the vehicle. Most of the other ambient lighting kits on Amazon that plug into the cigarette lighter adapter, when you get out of the car, they stay on until the car goes to sleep, which causes phantom draining. As you can see here, as soon as you shut the door, this kit goes to sleep and has very little impact on battery life, if any, once you exit the vehicle. So that's a huge plus for this kit. The build quality is amazing. All of the emitters were very well constructed. The kit came very nicely packaged in dense styrofoam. All of the LEDs are bright. There's no dim components. And overall, I'm very satisfied with this kit. Highly recommend it. This adds an amazing amount of wow factor to your car. So I don't have too many cons, but obviously the biggest one is the installation time. 16 hours later, as SpongeBob would say. It's a long install. It's tedious, but it's worth it in the long run. The other thing I didn't like was that you do have to hard modify your car, meaning you have to break some of the pieces permanently to get this installation done. Other than that, I really don't have any negatives about this kit. It is amazing in what it does. Thanks so much for joining me for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Any questions, hit me up down below in the comments. I'm happy to help. Take care. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.